Vanilla Football Manager is boring. Okay, maybe that was a little bit of an exaggeration. However, the truth is that there's only so much you can do with the game after a certain amount of time. It really is the same thing over and over again, even if you go to play in a different league or in a different country. The interface never changes and the challenges are identical. You know, it's almost like the people who work for Sports Interactive think that the entire world is Northern England. And as you know, I'm really not exaggerating that point. Even the stadiums in the game look completely identical. It's really hard to be immersed when you can't really go to the country that you're supposed to be in. Not releasing Football Manager 2025 has made this problem painfully obvious. So usually Sports Interactive can mask the problems with its flagship game by simply coming out with a new version. We'd get some minor upgrades to the interface, sure, maybe a new feature or two, and that would be enough to hold us over until the next new version came along. But if they miss a year, we suddenly have enough time to realize that the game is actually a little bit dry. Of course, I guess we don't have to keep playing the same game over and over again. I mean, we could play a different game, I guess, but what's the fun in that? I mean, being addicted to Football Manager means that you play Football Manager, obviously, not that you play other games. Anyway, the answer to this conundrum of obviously is to use the pregame editor to just change things around. And, well, that's easier said than done. You see, the pregame editor is kind of a mess. It's hard to find things. It's hard to figure out what you can and cannot change. And unfortunately, most advanced editors seem to concede that you have to resort to directly editing XML files at some point. Now, even editing XML files is something that you can figure out largely through trial and error. You don't have to be some computer programming whiz to figure it all out, but you also don't really need to go to those lengths to figure out how to have some fun with the pregame editor. Now, the first thing we need to figure out is how to actually navigate the pregame editor, and no, it's not easy. For example, if you click on nations, you get this list of every nation in the world. You can then scroll down to whatever you want to edit. Now, there's not much you can do here in the basic editor with England. You could change the youth rating or the state of development, I guess. But honestly, that's not going to make that much of a difference. I mean, you might as well start the game off managing in an underdeveloped country. We want to find something fun, not just change a few shirt colors or whatever. And unfortunately, a lot of what you can do in the more basic part of the editor is just basic. In fact, the way things are organized in the pregame editor makes things kind of hard to navigate. I can't figure out a way to go from England to any of the leagues in England, for example. Now, you can always just go over and select the Premier League from the competition screen. And here you can change the teams, the history, and not much else. Of course, that's not to say that the basic editor is useless. You can move players around, you can change player attributes, you can change the finances of the clubs, you can do stuff like that. However, for the more powerful and interesting things, you really need to go over to the advanced rules editor. That's where all the fun lies. Okay, let's learn how to do this. Go up to Rules on the menu bar and click on Add Nation Rules. Now select the nation in the drop-down. We want England. We're adding lower divisions and cups to the existing structure, so click on that. You know, I really don't know why you have to select all of that in order to change the existing rules. I mean, I get the feeling that the pregame editor was created with a completely different purpose in mind, almost like the programming team intended this to be mostly used just for adding in lower leagues that aren't part of the basic game. But, you know, the truth is that some of us really just want to fool around, so why make it so cryptic? Once you do that, you go back to the Rules menu and click on Convert to Advanced Rules. The game will warn you that there are fewer validation checks. Just click yes and move on. The validation checks aren't awful, of course, but this is another frustrating step you have to complete. Why do we need so many warnings? We're already in the editor after all. We know that we want to change things, so why try to stop us so many times? Now, at first it will let you change the rules for England. You can do some crazy things here, like you can change the default fixture times to 11 p.m. or 6 a.m. However, most of the other things you'll find here are kind of useless. It took me a while to remember how to navigate the engine. You see, you need to know how to click on the right menu to get to anything interesting. I'll show you. So you see up here where it says Show Rules For and then says England? That is your navigation menu. Change England to Premier League, and now you can change things that are actually interesting. Yeah, it's a problem. I don't know why there isn't a normal menu system. Perhaps it has something to do with the internal programming structure of the game. I don't know. I do have a feeling, though, that somebody out there probably could create a better pregame editor than this, one that just edits the XML files directly, because this is painful. Okay, here's where strange things can happen. You can have the program gather teams from different divisions, for example, if you wanted to do that for some reason. But the really fun stuff is in league settings. For example, you can have the league decided by anything you want. In fact, you can make it so the top team doesn't win the championship at the end. I think that there are some leagues that have some sort of bizarre structure like that, where they look at your performance over the last 3 years or something like that. There's always something weird going on. You can make some really odd fixture orders. I don't quite know what winner of first match rests on second date means, but it might be fun to try. You can also have double headers scheduled around Christmas and Boxing Day. That's actually the way football was in England back in the 1920s, believe it or not. And then you can do strange things with matches. My favorite is this selection. Have it so that the team with the highest position in the league wins if a match ends in a draw. Unfortunately, though, there doesn't seem to be a way to use more than one of these special match rules at once. There are some things that seem to be missing here. For example, I don't see any way to implement the old bizarre NASL rules that gave teams extra points for scoring more than 3 goals in a match. And of course, there's no way to force teams to take like ice hockey style penalty kicks like they used to do in the NASL in the first few years of the MLS. Now that would be fun to watch. You can set it up so that certain teams cannot be relegated. You can also set it up so that certain other teams absolutely must be relegated, and you don't need to provide a reason. Now, points are set up automatically as 3 for a win and 1 for a draw. You could change that, or you can make it so that teams get more points for a defeat than for a win. And then you can go on to Reddit with a screenshot showing how you won the league with a minus 100 goal differential and tell everybody that the game is broken. Now, the biggest problem here is the confusing array of choices regarding the time and date matches are scheduled. I swear half the editor is just fiddling around with scheduling options. And the worst part, of course, is that there's no real guide on how to use this. I don't know which settings work and which ones don't. It's just a matter of trial and error, and it's really annoying. However, we can fortunately learn from the work of others. Well, if you have a pregame editor file that was made by somebody actually competent, somebody who isn't me, you can take a look and see what they did. So here's a look at that North American League I was talking about the other day, for example. Notice, of course, that everything is set up in advanced rule editing. Here's the World Super League, which is still my all-time favorite scenario. The guy who created this had this great modification that gives a grant of money to teams for every 100 kilometers away from the match they are during cup ties. There are similar rules for the lower leagues, and it's really helpful. Well, that helps solve one of the issues that everybody faces when they try to do worldwide leagues. You see, the game forces teams to pay for their own travel, and that can be a huge disadvantage for teams from poorer countries, especially in places like South America. This is the sort of thing you only realize after you do a bunch of playtesting. Anyway, those are some of the odd things you can do in the pregame editor. It's fun to mess around with, though honestly it really is confusing. I guess that we can hope that there will be a better editor for FM26, but honestly, at this point, I think we should worry about whether FM26 will actually be released. Yeah, no worries though. I mean, even if there is no game, we have a community that is still ready to make the most out of FM24. And if all else fails, we could always go back and just play some of the older Football Manager and even Championship Manager games. There's always something to do. Anyway, see you later.